Elitists beware! You're in for a scare. Happy Halloween, everyone! It's the month of scares and bewares, and I figured, what better way to spend the scariest season of the year than with the spookiest thing in Fire Emblem, bad writing. Now, I've already given my whole spiel on how I'm doing this series, but considering that it's been a while, I'll give you a refresher. I'm coming at this as a writing challenge from the perspective of someone editing a finished product. The maps must stay exactly as they are, and I'm only allowed to tweak the framing of how they're presented. So I can't just say the Kitsune Massacre chapter is pointless filler, I'm just gonna cut it. I have to integrate it into the story. Now, without further ado, let's go over a quick recap of the Garon isn't an openly evil, mustache-twirling villain. He's a manipulator who has Corrin wrapped around his finger. Instead of the whole thing with ganglery, which is pretty cut and dry, Corrin sits on the magic chair, turns into a dragon, and kills Mommy in an uncontrollable rampage. The Hoshidans and Corrin are confused about who is on whose side and if any of this is even intentional. Even though it totally is! And things play out about the same as they did up to the Here is where the first major change I'm making is. The Hoshidan siblings are way too chill about Corrin showing up, killing their mom, refusing to elaborate, and then leaving. Story-wise, they should be gunning for her head, because as far as they know, Corrin was playing them for fools the entire time. From here, the branch of fate can play out basically the same. Corrin is conflicted and wants to run, but the Nohrian siblings are like, no, this is your decision, and we want Hoshido to know that you chose to stick with us. Lilith and Jacob or Felicia show up. I'm not touching my castle with a 10-foot pole. Alright, that brings us to Nohr. In this version, Iago is the only person insisting on Corrin's execution. The siblings are still on your side, and Garon plays the neutral third party, hearing out both sides before coming to his own decision. This does two things. One, it shifts a lot of the immediate blame away from Garon and Nohr as a country and more towards one bad actor who can justifiably be written off by the player as just that. And two, it makes Garon actually seem more intimidating because he's not being talked down from his decision to kill you, he's acting as a judge, and he gets the final say. And when his decision is made, it's final. Iago says Corrin can't be trusted, Xander says Corrin could do something to prove that she can be, and Garon accepts this proposition, and orders Corrin to quell the ice tribe that is destroying Nohrian monuments, saying that the rebellion must be stopped through any means necessary, and that she has unlimited bargaining power so long as she can get them to stop attacking the monument sites. Xander wants to go with her, but Corrin is still naive at this point and insists that she can resolve matters diplomatically and will only bring her personal retainer as a bodyguard. Iago sees the opportunity to murder a traitor and conjures up an army of Faceless to intercept Corrin in the woods. All the while, the much older and more jaded Xander thinks a diplomatic resolution with the Ice Tribe is impossible and tells Elise and Leo to keep an eye on Corrin. Elise shows up, and immediately upon making it to the Ice Tribe, Corrin and Elise are recognized, overwhelmed, and taken as prisoners to be hostages for the Ice Tribe. Regardless, Leo had already sent his retainers to keep an eye on Corrin from a distance, and with a bit of finesse from Niles, they managed to stage a prison escape. Only now, the Ice Tribe soldiers are arriving on the scene, and they are alerting townsfolk to come help stop the Nohrian royals, and Corrin has to fight her way to Kilma. Now, while Corrin is killing soldiers, she's also actively working to spare the civilians by telling them to stay in their homes no matter what. And Kilma sees this and agrees to negotiate with her, seeing the effort that Corrin is putting into keeping his people safe. One of my biggest personal gripes with Conquest is its insistence on Corrin simultaneously being this genius tactician who can fight and win battles while ensuring her soldiers never kill anyone ever, and at the same time having her be this sheltered, naive child. It's a bit much. Plus, simply showing her make the effort to reduce casualties and to seek diplomatic options should be enough for people to understand that she is a good person trying to do good. When Korin actually talks to Kilma, she asks why he's targeting Nohrian monuments instead of, say, military sites, and Kilma says that the monuments are eliciting some sort of strange magic, and he believes that Garon is using them to spy on his people, and that all he wants is for his people to be able to operate independently of Nohr, and he wants his daughters back. Korin agrees, but if you're playing male Korin, Felicia asks if she can stay with him, and Kilma says he understands, seeing how Korin operates, and gives his blessings to allow her to travel. Regardless, when we head back to Nohr, Korin reports on what she's done, and Garon says, "Nice work you did. You're gonna go far, kid." Now, trusting Korin, he gives her and Elise the task of finding the rainbow. Chapters 9 and 10 are mostly filler, and that's something we're going to see a lot in Fates, but I do want to make a couple changes in both of these chapters. First off, in Chapter 9, when we meet back up with Azura, Elise doesn't recognize her. Azura brushes this off as, oh, Elise was obviously too young to have ever really known her, but I do want that to be established. Now, in Chapter 10, when Takumi confronts Korin, he's one of the only Hoshido siblings with an understandably angry response, and that makes him stand out as being more emotional and impulsive than his other siblings. But if we're leaning into all of the siblings, specifically Ryoma being a little more angry, we need something to distinguish Takumi as being particularly aggressive. Because remember, we're not allowed to change anything in the actual gameplay, so the final boss of Conquest is absolutely going to be Shadow Takumi in the corridor. So why not start setting that up now? Takumi starts this chapter angry but understandable, but he handles his defeat to Korin's army poorly. Instead of showing Korin standing there while he runs off with his army, have Korin and company leave the docks and head towards the Rainbow Sage, and focus on Takumi coming to grips with everything in the forefront. Now, the possession plotline is pretty unclear as it's presented, and it doesn't really stand alone without revelations for context, which kind of sucks considering it's the basis for the final boss of the game. So let's start explaining. After Korin gets away, Takumi starts flying off the handle, shouting at her long after she can no longer hear him. You can even have his retainers trying to console him and calm him down, but he shoves them away and storms off. Once he's alone, we see him throw the Fujiyumi on the ground and scream, "Shut up!" He'll say it again and again, and finally, he says something along the lines of, "I'll kill her myself, I don't need your help." And if you really want to be on the nose, you can show the Fujiyumi leak some purple aura, but either way, that's the end of the scene. Now, Chapter 11 is another chapter with its entire basis being in Korin not killing people, but remember, we're tweaking that plot point, but I think that's actually fine for this chapter because, once again, Korin isn't the aggressor here. Hoshido is an occupying army in a neutral territory, and the game should point that out. But at the same time, Korin is trying to save lives. I think the best way to make the player understand that is to incentivize it through gameplay, just like with the Ice Tribe. And in this case, we use two specific characters to do that. Rinka and Kaze are both more or less out of the story once this chapter ends, so we can use it as an excellent opportunity to get the player to think about their actions. Now, I know I said I wouldn't be altering maps, but I'm gonna make one small change to the recruiting. Kaze and Rinka should both be optional. If you kill them in this fight, they die for real. Avoiding it shouldn't even be hard since they're stationary bosses in a very segmented map, but regardless, they should both be conditionally recruitable based on how the player plays the map. Say if Korin kills all of the enemies except for them, maybe the Rainbow Sage's approval and later self-sacrifice is enough to get Kaze to join her, but to get Rinka to join, you have to leave at least half of the enemy units alive. Once again, should be very easy considering the way the map is laid out, and now you have a consideration for the player to make. Do we kill all the enemies for XP, or do we work around them for the extra unit? Whether you want to keep Iago showing up as a hologram and telling Korin to 86 the Rainbow Sage is really up to anyone. It has both narrative benefits and drawbacks, such as specifically Fates has a lot of self-sacrifices on Korin's behalf, and every one of them takes away from every other one. On the other hand, it really helps sell the idea of Kaze and or Rinka joining Korin's army, since we're removing all of the non-lethal murdering. But regardless of what you choose, the next chapter is a travel chapter with elites getting sick and Ryoma in the way. And the only real change that I'd make is to have Ryoma be unequivocally after Korin's head from a narrative perspective. It would change his characterization a bit, but honestly, I think it'd make him a heck of a lot more interesting. Plus, since he's a samurai, you can really play up how Korin killing his mom and then fleeing is an insult to both of their honor. And when Korin inevitably escapes his grasp again, you can have him struggling with the second strike to his honor. Then we could have Cheve play out the same way as it does in the base game. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with this chapter. Hans is set up to be a complete monster that Garon only keeps around because he's useful, so it's plausible that Korin is expected to turn a blind eye in this version of the story as well. Alright, this brings us to This next chapter is a little notorious for having some stupid plot elements, and looking back over the sequence of events, it's genuinely shocking how easy it is to fix one of the most memed-on things in the game. Nobody recognizing Azura during the dance is dumb, and I think it's very clear the outfit change is just because they want the Dark Song cutscene to be visibly distinct from the Light Song one, but I think we can come up with a solution that isn't horribly contrived, and I think that's pretty simple. Garon has seen Azura, what, once? Just have Korin and company recognize her. What? Why is this a plot point in the game? The siblings talk about subtly undermining Garon all the time. Why did you make them stupid? Anyways, Azura does the funny song, Garon does the funny groan and doesn't die. Azura runs off, disappearing into a portal within the water. Garon yells for somebody to go after her, but everybody but Korin starts looking around in confusion, saying things like, "She just vanished into thin air!" Korin sees the portal and starts going after it, but at that point the Hoshidans in the crowd launch their attack, and Korin has to reach the portal by defeating the boss who is unwittingly blocking it. Slight gameplay change, Azura isn't available on this map, and when the boss is defeated, Korin dives into the portal just as it's closing. Also, I don't know what this is going to do to the power scaling community for Fire Emblem, but it's going to be implied that this battle is like 2 minutes long, tops. Anyways, when Korin arrives, Azura is like, "What are you doing here?" And Korin is like, "Why did you try to murder my dad?" Azura starts to explain, but they get ambushed by Valites, and Azura tells her that she'll explain it when they make it out. The chapter plays out, and after the three of them escape, Azura promises to answer any and all questions that Korin has, including what that song was supposed to do, where they are, and what Vala is. Specifically, she explains that there is an entity in Vala that can take over people's minds, and she believes that it has taken control of Garon. Her song was supposed to dispel that possession, freeing Garon, but it didn't work for some reason, and the violent reaction was not what she expected. She also says she knows all of this because she witnessed it happen before, and that it's currently controlling all of the people in Vala. Specifically, her grandfather, a very peaceful ruler, suddenly set out on a conquest to conquer all of Vala for seemingly no reason. The war was long and bloody, and when the war concluded, he started demanding weird things from his people, making them set up strange monuments, and the only reason she's not under the entity's influence is that her parents didn't trust what her grandfather was doing and put her in a deep realm to keep her safe until they could figure out what exactly that was. Korin admits that Garon has been building strange monuments all across Nohr, and that according to the Ice Tribe, they had been emitting some really strange magic, and Korin also asks why they're able to be in Vala if the monuments are here, and Azura admits she doesn't really know. Guess those revelations will have to come later. Regardless, Azura says that if these monuments are erected within Hoshido as well as Nohr, it could turn Korin's world into another Vala. Korin is obviously skeptical, but figures that she can at least give Azura the benefit of the doubt. And this is where Azura's plan B comes into play. Azura's like, "Hey Korin, remember that super special chair that turned you into a dragon? Let's use that." So now we have an actual justification for going through with the invasion of Hoshido as a means of getting Garon into a specific chair. It's Korin hedging her bets. If Azura is right, Garon will sit on the throne, and it'll be revealed that he's actually an evil dragon in a Garon skin suit, and if he isn't, well, we were gonna invade Hoshido anyways. Plus, when it comes time to explain it to the other siblings, Azura can simply say, "Hey, if I'm wrong, you can execute me." And that should be enough justification for them to be like, "Okay, she seems pretty confident in this. Let's hear her out." The next chapter is the one with the boot man, and it's a filler chapter, and I'm not going to be making any sweeping changes, just one tiny adjustment. If the player chooses to kill Shura, they should get back the money he stole. Just a tiny bit more incentive to consider both options for people who have already had some knowledge about the game. I also want to confirm at this point that Shura still is the person who kidnapped Azura, and that specifically he confirms Azura's story that his group did in fact steal her from a deep realm, and that it would have been impossible to get in Nohr and out with the princess alive. Anyways, off to his... First First off, the joke about Zolo's perfect recreation of Izana's personality being the thing that makes Korn and company suspicious of him is a really good bit, but there is a lot that I would change about the scene overall. My main problem is the idea behind having both nations' leaders meeting up in a place where they must play nice for the sake of preserving relations with an allied country is so good, but it's handled so bad. We don't need Xander and Ryoma bickering over who's hotter, and none of this, if only I had paid $20 to unlock the golden route. This scene should be, first and foremost, really tense. And writing that would be a project of its own. Seriously, it'd probably take more time and effort to do than the rest of this video combined. So I'm gonna hold off on going down the whole fanfiction route and just stick to my new characterizations for the siblings. Takumi is angry and borderline has to be physically restrained by Hinoka or Ryoma to not try and murder Korn. Ryoma is very coldly angry at Korn. Hinoka is filled with questions and is still trying to parse why Korn would do this. And Sakura is just like, can't we just be friends? To a resounding no from literally everyone else in the room. Anyways, back to the point of this video. After the run-in with the Hoshido royals and Zolo's execution, which I would never change, we finally get to everyone's favorite chapter. This chapter is really weird in just about every conceivable aspect, and it's kind of hard to explain why. Obviously the gameplay is whack, but story-wise it's hard to tell exactly what's going on because I don't think it's ever fully confirmed by the story. It's kind of framed as a test to see if Korn would make a good ally for the Wind Tribe, so I guess we're not really killing people, but they're definitely killing us. And I know this is before the Three Houses era of low-stakes battle having a perma-casual mode slapped on them, but I honestly just don't think the map should be like that. Seriously, changing it to just be the Wind Tribe is allied with Hoshido fight them just flows better with the story. I'll admit the way this chapter is presented bothers me more than it probably should. Anywho, the next chapter is the So, for the most part, this chapter is solid filler, but killing Lilith here is dumb and kind of pointless, especially since she had nothing to do with the plot for like 20 chapters now. There's just no reason to have it in the story. It doesn't develop any characters or affect the player emotionally. Lilith is an NPC who has like 6 lines of dialogue, and it doesn't even change the mechanics of what she does in Castle Invasions, so I don't understand who demanded that the fish dragon had to die and why. I mean, I've never really been a big fan of story deaths in Fire Emblem games regardless, but I mean, I guess it being there doesn't really hurt anyone, except Lilith. Anyways, we made it to home. Here's where I'm going to start making some more radical changes. And this is also where I may start to lose people. So I'll just say up front, I think in both Conquest and Birthright, there should be no chance for the family you don't side with to make it out alive. And I know this is kind of a personal thing, but I just don't think the game did a good job of selling the gravity of this situation. Takumi got possessed, plus a redemption, so killing his empty husk of a body was basically a mercy at that point. Sakura and Hinoka are practically unscathed physically, and the emotional impact is mostly implied rather than shown. Ryoma is the only one with a proper death, and even that is him doing a self-sacrifice for Korn's sake. So we're gonna change that. And yeah, this means I'm about to butcher your babies. Let's begin. In Sakura's chapter, she says she wants to be on the front lines with her troops, but Yukimura is like, what, are you stupid? And positions her in a safe position on the battlefield. So even if we're saying 0 HP makes it dead, there's still a chance the player just walks past her into Hoshido. So the easy solution is to make killing Sakura a victory condition, but if we want to be a little more creative with it, we can adjust the story instead. You see, we are way too far into this story for Korn to be able to go back on the invasion of Hoshido, and Garon knows it at this point. So why don't we twist the knife a little bit? Korn can try to bring Sakura in as a prisoner, just like in the base game, but here we get another tip of Garon's hand, when he's like, haha, no, execute her. Korn tries to argue against it, but Garon is just like, you saw the magic Mikoto could do. I'm not risking a similar move from a direct descendant. And then he kills her, and there's nothing you can do about it. Next chapter. Chapter 23 is the last time we see an unpossessed Takumi, but unlike in the base game, we actually already have some foreshadowing for what's gonna come. So, when we actually beat the map, Korn tries talking Takumi down and being like, hey, you're outnumbered, you're outgunned, and Garon isn't here right now, so go hide. and Takumi can respond by being like, very obviously pulsing with some wildly evil magic. Corrin is like, hey buddy, what's wrong? And Takumi climbs up on the ledge, and Corrin once again is like, be sensible, we're trying not to kill you, and Takumi can be like, wee! And you can show he's disappeared, just like in the base game. Alright. Stupid Pegasus map time. So, first off, I really like the opening to the next chapter with the Hoshidans in the street heckling Corrin, only to be forcefully silenced by Iago, with Corrin being able to do nothing but watch it all happen. And Hinoka's main conflict with Corrin in Conquest is a lot more understated than Takumi's or Ryoma's, and I think their dialogue should reflect that. Specifically, I think Hinoka should be more concerned with the why Corrin sided with Nohr than the other siblings, and we can kind of set this up starting in Izumo, but this is where it comes to a full front. And I think in this chapter we should really lean into the whole if your HP hits 0 you die thing. So just after you see a bloodied and defeated Hinoka slumped against a tree, and when Corrin approaches her, her only question is, why did you side with Nohr? And Corrin says, because they're my family. And Hinoka gets an, oh, I see how it is moment, just before dying with the knowledge that she never really meant that much to Corrin. Now we get to Ryoma, who is waiting patiently for his revenge, and the thing is, I don't really know how to fix this line specifically. We could just have Ryoma attack straight out the gate, but that just seems like a fantastic way to softlock people. But there is a way to have them face off that adds both a sense of urgency to the player while still giving them time to get Corrin out. Have a dialogue play out over the course of the chapter. It's very ingrained in samurai culture to have long dialogues before fighting, so have Corrin and Ryoma talking it out while Corrin's army is fighting trying to get to them. Each new turn would be one more line of dialogue, and when it's time for Ryoma to finally go on the attack, he can say, "No more games! To the death!" and attack on that turn. Ryoma is also probably the best handled death in the original Conquest. There's not much I'd change that I already haven't. Essentially, him taking his own life is the end of his character arc that brings him full circle back to where he was at the start of the game, only now he understands Corrin and then makes the decision to die protecting her at the cost of literally everything else. Now, we get to Iago. Say what you want about Fates' writing. I think we can all agree that Iago is easily one of, if not the best aspect of it. He's just so unnecessarily evil, and he is loving absolutely every second of it. And I know I said it doesn't work for Garon, but Garon's supposed to be a more nuanced character. Cheese villains are fine as long as you know where to use them. But we do have to come up with a justification for fighting them now, since Corrin is still hedging. So here's what I came up with. Iago is an evil rat man and a schemer, right? So right at Garon's big moment of triumph, Iago is like, yes, now I will execute my plan to usurp the Nohrian royal throne and become king of everything. Only the assassins that he sends aren't nearly as cracked as Xander and Camilla, so now he's got a fight on his hands. We kill Iago and Hans and finally get to get. Now that we've hedged for long enough, it's finally time to step out onto the ledge. We open the door to see that Garon has had better days. But he's not an evil dragon, he's a slime monster. That's weird, but regardless, we go with Azura's idea of murdering him in the face, and we get out happily ever... Oh, right. That guy. So in the original Fates, he goes on to kill Corrin, who dies and goes to heaven to get a pep talk from Ryoma, Mikoto, and Takumi, and, what? But why? Again, this is just a baffling plot point, and I have absolutely zero idea why it's there in the first place. Anyways, that guy, Takumi, isn't a raging, incoherent lunatic in this version. He's actually surprisingly coherent. In fact, maybe he's even a little more chill than Takumi usually is. He goes on to explain that he is in fact the entity that can possess people, and that his name is Anankos, and that he would very much like Corrin's body. We're not going to reveal exactly why that is in this version, but we will go through with his plan, which was that he possessed Garon, made a homunculus to obey him with his body, which is why Azura's song didn't actually free him from the possessions in the theater, and then started looking for a suitable host to kill the weakened party with. Luckily, there is a super mentally unstable, absurdly powerful host body that didn't know how much power it really had. Everything went according to his plan, down to Garon sitting on his throne, and fighting them as a sludge monster. Cue the epic fight scene, and I would go as far as to add a game over scene where it shows the evil swirlies in Corrin's body if the player loses this fight. Finally, when the player actually wins, we get to see the aftermath of the non-golden route play out. The host body is defeated, but the entity is still out there. Xander is crowned King of Nohr, while Hoshido is in absolute shambles, and yeah, things are alright for Corrin for now, but could they have been better? And that's your hook to buy the DLC. Hello, it is post-editing Bicken here, and thanks for watching. If you managed to stay for this long, maybe you should subscribe or do something like that, because I am planning on making more content like this in the future. I said this was coming, and it came. My goal was to have this out by Halloween. I'm glad I actually hit it for once. I have some stuff planned for Christmas, so be on the lookout for that. And to everyone else, I thought I would plug my Discord, because I have one, and I haven't really been posting it in a lot of places, so if you click the link in the description, you can go to my Discord. There's a pretty cool community there. They do weekly game nights. I sometimes come on to play some Jackbox. So yeah, I hope you all have a very spooky Halloween.